Hi everybody, I'm Sarah Ockwell-Smith. Today I am going to talk to you about the idea that feeding to sleep is a bad habit or something that you should break. Lots of people contact me and say, Sarah, am I creating a bad habit by feeding my child to sleep? Certainly everything I read seems to tell me that my baby should go to sleep by themselves. I should put them down drowsy but awake, and if I feed them to sleep, I'm going to cause all sorts of sleep problems. Other people contact me and say, I'm breastfeeding or my partner's breastfeeding, and I think that it's become a bit of a problem because I think it's making our baby wake more in the night because they're waking for a breastfeed, and it's become a bit of a habit. So I'm here today to categorically say both of those are wrong. Breastfeeding to sleep or bottle feeding to sleep isn't a bad habit. It won't create sleep problems, and it certainly doesn't make babies wake in the night. That's a really, really popular myth that is so absolutely wrong. Feeding in the night, breastfeeding, does not make babies wake. So why do they wake? That's really important to understand. So even if you weren't feeding, babies would still wake about every 45 minutes because that's how long their sleep cycles are. Now, if everything is okay, if they're comfortable, if they're not hungry, if they're not thirsty, if they're not too hot, too cold, or if they're perhaps not lonely or scared, then they'll start a new sleep cycle without you. If any of those things are wrong, then they're going to need parental input to get back to sleep. Now, what do you think is the best way to calm a baby and to help them to start a new sleep cycle? Absolutely, it's feeding, particularly breastfeeding, because breastfeeding in particular covers everything I've just said. It covers hunger, it covers thirst. It helps with the physical contact to regulate temperature. It will warm them up or to cool them down. You have the physical contact, particularly skin to skin contact, which helps to calm babies if they're feeling anxious or scared or frustrated. And obviously just the contact with the mother is enough to soothe them back to sleep. Now, I cannot state clearly enough that that is not waking them up. The baby is not starting a sleep cycle and then at the end of it thinking, aha, I'm going to wake up now because I want to breastfeed, and I'm going to do that every time at the end of every sleep cycle because breastfeeding is so wonderful that I'm going to specifically wake for it every sleep cycle. That's not what's happening. What's happening is they're reaching the end of a sleep cycle, and breastfeeding in particular, formula feeding too, obviously, because they get the comfort, they get the hunger satiated, they get their thirst satiated, and they also get physical contact with you. But they're not waking because of that. It's not a bad habit. The answer is actually it's the solution. It's so important that particularly breastfeeding mothers understand this. You haven't created a bad habit. You've not created a sleep problem. Breastfeeding is the solution to the sleep problem, not the problem itself. It's definitely not a habit. I've worked with hundreds of parents to help them to gently get their babies to sleep through the night, and almost all of them still feed to sleep. In actual fact, I would say feeding to sleep, if you ever want to wean from bottle feeding or breastfeeding, is the very, very last feed that should go. Why is that? Well, because it's the most comforting and the most calming. If you're breastfeeding in particular, the breast milk contains all sorts of compounds that aid sleep. You know, how wonderful is that? It's almost like you're giving your baby some medication in a way, natural medication to help them to sleep. Why would you not do that? It makes no sense. So the real question is, well, how do I get my baby to stop needing that so much in the night? The very short answer to that is time. They will outgrow it. They won't need it forever. Whilst they need it, it makes sense to feed them, since that's the easiest and quickest way to get them back to sleep. So in time, they'll outgrow it, and in time, it'll be much easier for partners to get baby back to sleep, particularly if the mum's breastfeeding. If you do want to wean off of the night feed, then my suggestion would first of all be to think, well, if your baby is younger than 12 months, don't even consider it. It's too young. Whoever said babies over 6 months don't need to feed in the night is completely wrong. It's completely unevidence-based. Who's to say they don't need feeds? Actually, they probably do, particularly if you're weaning at a more baby-led pace. So once they've got to about 12 months, you might want to consider looking at other ways to help them to calm without feeding. In order to do that, you have to introduce other things to help them to feel calm. So things like music or scent or comfort objects, certain lighting, certain keywords that you might say to them. And you have to introduce these along with the feeding. Ultimately, then, what you're aiming to do once they're around about 12 months is just for the first wake, see if you can get the baby back to sleep without feeding. And if that goes well, then perhaps you might want to consider the next feed, and so on. The very, very last feed that I would drop, as I said before, is the feeding to sleep. So the evening feed, and if the baby's napping, the feed before the naps. Because this really is, in my opinion, the most important one, because it helps to calm them, and anything that gets them off to sleep well will help for a better night's sleep too. So just to summarise, there's no such thing as creating a bad habit with feeding. Breastfeeding in particular doesn't make babies wake in the night. It's the solution to waking, and really feeding to sleep is probably by far the easiest way to get the baby to sleep. It's almost the most enjoyable for them and the easiest for you. Why would you not do that? So all of you watching out there, you can carry on feeding to sleep for as long as you'd like. It's perfectly okay. It's not a bad habit. Enjoy it. Thank you. Bye bye.